In the late 1970s, in a quiet suburb of North London, the Hodgson family lived in peace until something terrifying began to disturb their lives. The house, number 284 Green Street, had always been a typical, unassuming home, but it was about to become ground zero for one of the most notorious paranormal events in modern. It started innocently, enough for furniture moving on its own. At first, the family thought it was a prank, but then the disturbances grew worse. One evening, as 11-year-old Janet Hodgson sat alone in her bedroom, she heard a strange scratching sound coming from the walls. She opened her eyes in horror, only to see a piece of furniture move across the floor by itself. As the days passed, Janet began to act strangely. One night, her mother, Peggy Hodgson, heard her daughter speaking in an unfamiliar, deep voice, one that didn't belong to her. When she entered the room, she saw Janet, her eyes wide and unblinking, speaking with a voice that sounded more like a man than a child, from inside the walls, followed by the sound of something or someone walking around the house. In the middle of the night, furniture were hurled across the room by an invisible force. The family heard loud banging sounds. When officers arrived, they witnessed the chaos, first-hand furniture moving, strange knocking sounds from inside the walls, and Janet being physically thrown from her bed. But they were unable to explain it. Word of the bizarre events spread quickly. Soon, paranormal investigators from the Society for Psychical Research arrived at the house, led by Maurice Grosse and Guy Lyon Playfair. The team set up equipment, hoping to capture evidence of the strange activity. What they didn't expect, however, was the sheer intensity of what they were about to witness. As the investigators spent more time in the house, the disturbances escalated. The poltergeist began to violently lash out, throwing objects at the investigators, causing them to flee in fear. One evening, Maurice Grosse, while attempting to communicate with the entity, witnessed Janet's body levitating off the bed. He could only watch in horror as the young girl seemed to be. The poltergeist didn't just move objects and throw things. It spoke through Janet. The voice was deep, guttural, and filled with malice. It identified itself as Billa Spirit with a grudge. Investigators recorded the voice, which seemed to change in tone, shifting from a man's voice to a child's voice within seconds. No one knew where this entity had come from, but it seemed to have a personal vendetta against the Hodgson family. After weeks of escalating terror, the activity peaked one final night. The house shook violently, windows rattling and doors slamming on their own. The investigators captured footage of heavy furniture moving, and in the midst of it all, Janet screamed in agony. She was thrown across the room by an unseen force, hitting the wall with a sickening thud. After months of terrifying experiences, the poltergeist activity seemed to suddenly stop. The Hodgson family eventually moved out of the house, leaving behind a place filled with the lingering memories of horrors they couldn't fully understand. To this day, the Enfield Poltergeist remains one of the most compelling and terrifying true stories of the supernatural, with no clear explanation of what happened or why it happened. The question remains, was it the work of a demonic spirit, a product of collective hysteria, or something beyond human comprehension? The truth may never be known, but the legacy of the Enfield Poltergeist continues to haunt those who have heard its chilling tale.